Hey, Sean, I wanted to talk about confidence in video production. And to explain to you how I got to where I am, I have to give you a quick history of my experience as a producer. I worked for CNN back in 2007, doing some video production for these mobile tours that they were doing. And then I started my company after that, and we did mostly social media management that I was sort of doing little videos for here and there to be able to post on people's pages. And then about 7 years ago, split that off, and I just took the video production half of the company, and my buddy took the social media half, and now we both have our own agencies that work together when we need to. But that's really when I started doing video production full-on focused professionally full-time. And I was just saying yes to everything. It was a hustle. And I've talked about hustle before, and I don't like hustle and the concept of it and what it does to creatives and the business world in general. But for a while, I was in that desperate situation of I just needed work. And so I was saying yes to anything and everything that popped up. I worked with some awful agencies that took advantage of me. I worked with awful clients who took advantage of me. And both of them did that because I let them, because I was just saying yes to everything. I thought that I needed the business. And to an extent, I did need the revenue, and you may need the revenue. And we don't always have the luxury to be selective and be discerning. But I was just sort of saying yes to everything, reaching out, doing all this effort to get business and start to get momentum. And then in 2018, my now good friend Dane hired me for the first time, and I met a few other people. And then I started having people that I trusted, and it's this crew that I work with. And that gave me the confidence to start hiring other people and really taking what I used to do everything as a one-man band. And then as I started to be able to trust people more and not only trust them to film what I wanted filmed, but also to film better than I would have filmed it, and to know like, oh, if I'm doing this food shoot, there's 2 or 3 people that I know will shoot it better than I would. So if I can hire them too, the project gets better. And so 2018 was this huge year for me of growth, of not just growth with more clients and more money, but growth with what we were doing. And that goes hand in hand. But I started working with bigger clients because I could produce better looking stuff because I had a bigger team that was more capable than I was by just myself. But it was still very much saying yes to everything, where I was trying to build momentum, build my portfolio, and get that word of mouth that helps. But I was still just like, oh yeah, you want that project? Yeah, we can do it. And I could figure out a way to do it. And I did for the most part. Then 2019 hit and hit the ground running. It was a great year. I took off 3 months starting in October because my son was born. My son was born in July, and I worked just a little bit in July, August, and September while my wife was on maternity leave. And then I took paternity leave, but as a freelancer, that just means you're not getting paid, and you can take as much leave as you want. So long as you don't go completely broke. And so we had enough support that I was able to do that. And so the first half of 2019 had been very, very productive. I'd done a lot of big projects with big teams, but it was always, I always felt like I was testing something, like I was working up to how I would approach these projects. And because of that, I felt like the client was always doing me a favor by hiring me. And so since I was trying something, maybe it was a little bit out of my comfort zone, I felt this obligation to say like, well, you don't need to pay me as much, or like, we'll do it your way, or I know it would be better this way, but if you want to do that, that's fine. We won't do it that way. And it was this balance that I was making up in my mind. At the end of the day, the client wants the best project, and they're usually willing to pay for it. The good clients are willing to pay for it. But it took me a while to learn, like, no, I'm an expert. I'm an expert and I have experience in doing this. You should really listen to me. And I've seen a bunch of people fail doing it that way. Listen to me, because it's going to be better if we do it this way, even if it costs a little bit more or it takes more time or something. So I was still figuring this out in 2019 and growing. And Boom was getting big and it was exciting. Then Kid happened. We slowed down a little bit. Then January of 2020, things ramped right back up. I got back out. I was working with agencies, doing some awesome work, really stretching myself on what I was capable of doing. And then March of 2020 hit, and the pandemic started, and I stopped working. video production got very difficult for a couple months. And so it was tough to justify paying for childcare. So I started becoming a full-time dad and working less and less. And now as it's gone on, I've started working a little bit more, occasionally doing some shoots here and there, but mostly editing during naps and things like that, or like I am right now, making YouTube videos while he's napping. As I've tiptoed back into production and ramping things up just a little bit here and there, not as any choice that I've made, but I started being more discerning because I just didn't have the time. I used to be able to say yes to every project and scramble and stay up late and figure out ways to make it work. But now I have a very finite amount of time. I have hard limits for how long I have to edit, how many days I can shoot a month, etc. And so I've had to pick and choose projects, and there's projects that I know aren't a good fit for what I'm doing, either with the client and what they're promoting or what they stand for. A lot of times how seriously they're taking COVID protocols. And I've been invited to work on teams that they weren't going to wear any masks. It was going to be shooting inside all day. And I'm like, no, that's not for me. So sort of accidentally, I was put in this situation where I got to be very choosy about who I'm working with because I can really take maybe one project a month, if that. And so as I've stepped back over the past couple weeks especially, I just finished gala season, which for me is, I have a bunch of nonprofit clients that have events in October and November that are big fundraising events. So September and October, and in this case, even into November with the final changes, I'm just cranking out these projects for these events. And now that that's over, I've been looking forward to that being over, and I'm sort of in this peaceful, calm place where I've now seen what it's like to be super busy, what it's like to say yes to everybody, what it's like to be completely unemployed, and then what it's like to tiptoe back in and then have this rush again of where people just need stuff now. And now that that's over, I'm back in this place where I can look around and say, how do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? I have done this on everyone else's terms for so long, and I have two clients right now. I have two projects that are happening. One is with this fire truck pump company that's creating this proprietary system that makes pumping a fire truck, which I had no idea was as complicated as it is, makes it easier, safer. This thing saves lives. It's going to save property and time. It's an awesome thing. And so I'm helping make videos that are going to sell this and then train people to use it properly. And then my only other project next spring is with the symphony again. And I'm so excited about this, but as I'm approaching this, and I've got shoot days coming up for some training videos with this fire truck system, and I was just today starting to do my pre-production and plan my schedule, and I want to approach things thoughtfully and safely. And we just don't have time typically to have a long safety meeting, to have a powwow at the beginning of the day. We're on limited time. And now that I've got this client who understands, they trust me to do this properly, I can step back and say, you know what? We're going to set up the day before, so that way we can come in the morning. It's going to cost a little bit more, but that way we can come in the morning, hit the ground running, and do this right, maximize our time together, which is ultimately going to be a cost savings over wasting part of our day that we've got this place rented on setup. And then with my ethos of how I like to run a set, I've worked for a long time to get my terms where I want them, and I have them where I want them as far as COVID protocols and on-set behavioral expectations. I've dealt with some overt racism and sexism on set before, and now my terms say that if you do that, we're going to stop working, but we're still going to charge you, and you have to agree to that. And I've made videos about this, but it turns out that if I have that conversation and show that in my terms, I've had a few people be like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about that. I don't think that that's really fair because with it. And it's a really easy way for me to say, oh, I don't think we're going to be a good fit. If that's going to be a struggle for you, then I know it could potentially be just an annoying situation to work together. We don't sync up that way. So I've just avoided working with those people. But so I've had this confidence in my terms, but as far as running the set, this shoot coming up next week with the fire trucks for these training videos, I brought in somebody, my friend Sean Kirkland, he and I have a budding relationship, and he is just an absolute expert in educational videos and directing them. And so I get to step back and just do the technical production side of things, and he's going to direct everything. And that's what I want, that's what I'm excited about with this project. And to have the confidence to say, I'm going to come in here and tell the client it's going to be more expensive, but it's going to be better, a lot better if we do it this way. And then the little thing that I'm stuck on is I love starting my production days with a little bit of yoga and mind clearing to put myself in a headspace where I can create better. And I've always had this dream of like, I want everyone on set to do that. I want that to be a thing. When you work with me, you know that we're going to take 5 minutes. We're going to close our eyes. We're going to think about how we got here, what this work is going to do, its impact on us as individuals, our organizations, and the world in general, and sit with that and take that power into the production with us. And I'm always like, that's going to annoy people. I never do that with everybody because I feel like people are going to roll their eyes. And so I'm finally coming to terms with, hey, everything that my gut has told me, all my instincts have taken a while to prove themselves, but everything that I've thought would work, even if difficult, as I've implemented these things in my terms, in the way that I do production, it has ended up being a positive, or at least being something where I know, hey, I'm headed in the right direction. I just need to tweak my approach maybe. And so it dawned on me, like, I'm just always assuming that I'm annoying the client by trying these things and experimenting with these things. And it never really has. And so it's taken me 14 years, coming up on 15 years of being a professional video producer to settle into a place where I can trust myself and I can trust my instincts and I can try some things, and to remind myself that I have the power here. They're hiring me because of what I do and what I've done, and they trust that, and no one is rooting for me to fail. And that's something I have to remind myself all the time. Whenever the phone rings and it's a client calling, I still to this day, I'm like, oh no, they're going to be mad. They're going to be really mad at me for something. And never have I really had an angry phone call. If anything, I've had a phone call with somebody who's like, hey, we didn't like how this turned out. We want to help fix it. It's never like, hey, you screwed this up. We want our money back. Get out of here. It's always people wanting to work together to make things right. And yet it takes me so long to admit that and to adjust to that. And that bleeds over into production and the way I approach things, to say people just want this to go well and they're trusting me to bring it all to life. And if they're trusting me, then I should probably trust me a little bit too. So this was a long story, but I tell the story to illustrate the point that as you are doing production, if you're a producer or creative of any type, follow your heart. And don't worry too much about making a client mad, because in my experience, if a client does get mad, it doesn't matter what you would have done. They're probably a lousy client and you'll be happy to be done with them when you're done with them. So follow your heart and produce stuff the way that you want to produce it, because when you produce stuff the way you want to produce it, or create stuff the way you want to create it, you're going to create better stuff because you're happier creating it that way. And ultimately, they want better stuff. And so everyone's going to be happy. You just have to trust yourself a little bit. And this isn't me telling you this with all this experience of like, one day you'll get there like me. This is me still figuring it out, still adjusting to it every day a little bit more and trying to get better with each passing project. So this is what I've got. This is what I'm trying to remind myself, maybe more than anything, by making this video. And maybe it'll have just that much value to you as you go out and make stuff too. Thank you very much for watching it. If you made it this far, I really, really appreciate it. That's all. See you later. Bye.